At some point, most people who struggle to learn Spanish decide the problem is them. They don't have the knack, languages just aren't their thing. In this video, I want to show you why that's almost never true and how to solve this problem. Because after years of teaching Spanish, I keep seeing the same two mistakes over and over, and neither of them really have anything to do with natural talent. When you strip back all of the different styles and approaches to learning Spanish, they all have the same core problem: treating Spanish as a hobby, an extra thing to develop gradually alongside work, your social life, and family commitments. It's an added stressor to your day that you must make time for. And although this seems like the only reasonable approach for those who have a busy schedule, it is the path of little progress. And this hobby treatment creates what I call the polarization of language learning, where people find themselves on one of either two extremes of learning Spanish. The first and most common extreme is the productive waste of time approach. And the most glaring example of this was when my old football coach told me he was nearing a 2-year streak on Duolingo. And when I said, "Ay, qué guay, entonces quieres hablar en español?" he replied, "Nah, I'm not ready for that." Which is pretty worrying, because if I had spent nearly 2 years learning Spanish every single day and wasn't comfortable enough to have a basic conversation, I would have to look in the mirror and wonder what's going on. And I do understand its appeal due to the ease of use, and the gamification makes it fun enough to do at the end of a day when you're tired and otherwise wouldn't be bothered to do any Spanish. But here's my unpopular opinion. I think it's honestly worse to do Duolingo than nothing. And the reason behind this is because you're better off resting and letting that desire or anxiety of not doing Spanish build up until you finally find the energy to actually learn in a productive way, instead of satisfying that desire of doing a little bit every night for 10 or 15 minutes that realistically is not getting you anywhere, because you're confusing the streaks and points with actual progress. And you can probably tell how much I dislike Duolingo. But this productive waste of time approach extends beyond Duolingo. Another common example I've seen is binge watching a bunch of Spanish content like this one without taking any action. I'm sorry if this hits close to home, but many people will watch this entire video, understand the information and feel satisfied with it, but they will never actually take the step to implement the actions in this video. They'll keep jumping around, feeding off that little boost without ever actioning the information that they find across all of these different videos. And there are plenty more examples of this productive waste of time approach, so please do look at your current strategy and see if you can find any places where you are feeling like you're making progress without really getting anywhere. The other extreme of this polarization of language learning is treating Spanish like a subject, and we can thank the education system for this one, because with languages we've grown up learning how to pass exams and not what it takes to hold a conversation in Spanish with the Spanish speaker on the streets. And these are two totally different things. In school we spend most of our time writing and reading, yet if we want to be conversationally fluent, we should be focusing primarily on listening and speaking. And these are the two main approaches that I see people nowadays using, and it leads people to have that belief that they don't have the knack or natural ability to learn languages because they've spent months doing one of these two things and have made next to no progress. But as we've identified here, the problem has nothing to do with being naturally gifted with languages. The problem is all to do with the approach. So what is the solution to not fall into these traps? And the answer is making Spanish part of your daily life. We need to create a level of immersion that keeps Spanish in the forefront of your mind and creates a level of obsession where your mind begins to see the world around you in Spanish. And this idea can be perfectly distilled down into a quote from my favorite author, Haruki Murakami, that learning another language is like becoming another person. If you think about it, the entire world around you is filtered through your language. Every object, emotion, experience is all filtered through words. And the bottom line with all of this stuff that I'm saying is that language lives in every moment of our day. So what we want to do is leverage this fact by building the habit of changing your lens from which you view the world from your native tongue to Spanish, because this constant interaction with Spanish is what makes the time frame of 6 months, if you are following my plan, it makes it totally doable. And even if you aren't implementing my plan and incorporate this idea of making Spanish part of your daily life, the progress that you're going to make is going to be frightening in comparison to treating it as a hobby. And how do we make this happen? How do we actually change the way we think from our native tongue to Spanish? How do we change that lens? And the answer is through habits. The more you engage with Spanish throughout the day, the more your brain is being soaked in Spanish, the more it's being used to absorbing Spanish. And the main habit to focus on is listening as much as possible, whether that's listening to podcasts whilst commuting to and from work, Spanishifying your social media, watching Spanish TV shows and films. All of these increase the time your brain is processing in Spanish, and the more it will then translate the world around you into Spanish. It is simply just a habit you have to build up. And the longer you do these habits, not only will they themselves become second nature in your daily routine, but so will the habit of thinking in Spanish, which is the more fundamental thing that we were trying to achieve. And that's it for today. I hope you found the video helpful, and if you want to work with me directly, you can check the top link in the description, and I also have a totally free Spanish newsletter that you can join. There'll be a link to that in the description as well, and please let me know what videos you want from me in the future. Thanks for watching. Hasta la próxima. Ciao.